What if I told you that the land beneath Africa is older than almost every mountain range on Earth? Older than the Atlantic Ocean, older than the dinosaurs, older even than most of the oxygen you breathe. Welcome to the incredible story of how Africa came into existence. Before we begin, subscribe to African Storyverse and click the notification bell, because every week we uncover the forgotten giants who shaped Africa. And tonight, the giant is the continent itself. Imagine a world with no continents you would recognize. No Africa, no Europe, no Americas. Only a young, restless planet of fire, steam, and stone. 4 billion years ago, Earth was still writing its first chapters. And in that chaos, something extraordinary began to form. The ancient heart of what would one day become Africa. But here's the surprising truth. Africa was not born in a single moment. It was assembled, piece by piece, over deep time, forged from some of the oldest rocks ever discovered on this planet. Scientists call these foundations cratons. Think of them as the deep, unbreakable bones of a continent. While younger lands rise and fall, a craton endures. Across what is now Africa, several of these ancient cores took shape. Vast shields of cooled magma and compressed stone, locked into place by the end of the Archean Eon. To most people, a rock is just a rock. To Earth itself, these cratons were destiny. They became the anchors around which everything else would gather. For hundreds of millions of years, these separate blocks drifted, collided, and healed. Oceans opened and closed between them. Mountain belts rose where crust smashed into crust, then wore down into dust. Africa was not yet one land. It was a family of islands of stone, slowly learning how to become a single body. Then came one of the greatest construction projects in planetary history. Between roughly 800 and 530 million years ago, the Earth entered a season of collisions so vast, it redrew the map of the southern world. This was the age of the Pan-African orogeny, a series of mountain-building events that welded Africa's ancient cores together and stitched them into something larger still. India and Madagascar pressed against East Africa. South America locked against West Africa. Australia and Antarctica joined the growing mass. From this union rose Gondwana, a supercontinent so enormous it covered about 1/5 of Earth's surface and held nearly 2/3 of all the land that would later become today's southern continents. Africa sat at its heart. Picture it, a single continuous landmass stretching from the tropics toward the poles. Rivers that no longer exist. Forests and deserts whose names we will never know. Animals whose bones became the fossils that later proved the continents once fit together like a shattered plate. Gondwana was not a myth, it was home, and for a time it grew even larger. During the late Paleozoic, Gondwana fused with the northern landmass of Laurasia. Together they formed Pangaea, the last great supercontinent, a world where you could, in theory, walk from what is now Africa into lands that would become Europe and Asia without crossing a single ocean. Most rulers searched for larger armies. Earth searched for larger continents, and for a while it found one. But no empire of stone lasts forever. Around 200 million years ago, deep forces began to tear Pangaea apart. Heat rose from the mantle. Rifts opened like wounds across the crust. The Atlantic Ocean was not always there. It was born when Africa and South America began to pull away from each other. A slow divorce written in basalt and seawater. Listen to that idea again. The ocean that separates Lagos from Rio, Dakar from Recife, was once dry land. The coastlines still remember. Place the western edge of Africa against the eastern edge of South America, and the fit is almost perfect, because they were once the same body. Gondwana itself began to fragment in the early Jurassic, around 180 million years ago. Piece by piece, the southern world came undone. India drifted north like a runaway ark. Madagascar tore free. Australia and Antarctica separated later still. Antarctica locked itself into ice, and Africa, the ancient core, the stubborn heart, remained. But Africa did not simply sit still while the world rearranged itself. Inside the continent, new forces woke. The African plate continued to move. The East African rift began to open, a living scar still splitting the land today, from the Afar Depression down through the Great Lakes. In that rift, Earth is writing the next chapter in real time. One day, millions of years from now, East Africa may become a new ocean floor, a new coastline, a new birth. So when we ask how Africa came into existence, the honest answer is this. Africa is not a finished object. It is a process. First came the cratons, the deep ancestral bones, older than memory. Then came the collisions that welded those bones into one body. Then Gondwana and Pangaea, and the long breaking that carved the Africa we recognize on maps. And still the rifting continues. Still the mountains rise and fall. Still the Sahara breathes wet and dry across ages of climate. What makes Africa special is not only its kingdoms, its myths, or its forgotten giants of history, though those stories matter. What makes Africa special is that its ground remembers the beginning of continents themselves. Some of the oldest continental crust on Earth still lies beneath African soil. When you stand on that land, you are standing on deep time. The Ethiopian highlands, the Karpval craton of southern Africa, the vast shields of West Africa and the Congo. These are not just landscapes, they are archives. Every ridge, every escarpment, every ancient greenstone belt is a sentence in a book 4 billion years long. And yet most people were never taught to read it. School maps show Africa as a fixed shape, a puzzle piece on a blue board. But the true story is motion, fire, pressure, patience. A continent assembled through collisions violent enough to raise mountain chains, then quiet enough to let rivers carve civilizations into their flanks. Before we close, remember this. The same forces that built Africa also connected it to the rest of the living world. When Gondwana held Africa, South America, India, Australia, and Antarctica together, life moved across that shared land. That is why fossils of the same ancient plants and animals appear on continents now divided by oceans. The rocks tell the truth long after the oceans forget. So, the next time someone says Africa is only a chapter in someone else's history book, remember the deeper truth. Africa is one of the oldest chapters Earth ever wrote. Its foundations were laid when the planet was still young. Its body was forged in the furnace of supercontinents. Its coastlines were cut by the birth of oceans, and its story is still being written beneath our feet. If this story inspired you, like this video, subscribe to African Storyverse and click the notification bell, because Africa's greatest stories are only just beginning. The land remembers, and so should we.